Hey guys, it's Doodly Squatch here. Got another doodle for you, some stories. Let's get into it. Here we go. So recently at work, I've been doing a number of frog doodles and fiddling around with those. And I thought I'd scan these and see what I could do with them. Trying to figure out some kind of composition where they make sense and just see what happens with them. They turn out okay. But more importantly, I just had fun fiddling around and being colorful. But what is it? I was thinking recently about funny childhood experiences that kind of follow you later in life, that sort of thing. And I got to thinking about when I was just a wee lad. I remember finding a baby bird that had fallen out of its nest, and it was just, on the concrete by our garage, just rolling around, helpless, just looking awful. And I remember when we I had trouble with colors there, but I brought it to my mom, and my mom put it in a little Kleenex box with different things, and it was alive, but it was cold and helpless, and so my mom was trying to figure out how to feed it or what to feed it, that sort of thing, and how to help it. And where we lived, there wasn't any kind of like animal shelter that dealt with birds. And thinking about it now, oh yeah, very good. Thinking about it now, it's just a common bird. It's not some endangered species, something like that. You take it to a vet, they're just going to be like, well, it doesn't have a mom, it's going to die at the end. And but golly, we watched sort of that thing for days, and just slowly but surely it died. And it was hard on me. I was younger, I was a younger kid, and just kind of feeling helpless and not being, it's like, well, what was the point? Why did I save this bird if it's just gonna die? And it's interesting because that sort of story is played out on a lot of like kid shows. There's a Bluey episode about it, and Bluey feels really bad about the bird dying, and that's just it's one of those lessons you learn as a kid. But for me, it was in my mind, it's like by saving that bird, I kind of prolonged its suffering. It lasted longer than it would have, had I just left it there. And so I kind of got the perspective of these, nature documentarians that, they see an animal get attacked or something like that. And, it's like they let nature take its course. And, but my twisted mind, another memory that sort of connected to that, when I was a kid, and I would like find bugs or something like that, and I would like try and squish it, and my mom would see me step on this bug and not quite kill it, and she'd like, you finish what you started. You don't just injure the thing and then leave it there. It's suffering. You have to kill it. and so that memory, that lesson kind of attached itself to my memory of this baby bird. And I remember like a year later being out on my in my front yard and seeing another baby bird that had fallen out of a nest, and it was the exact same scenario. It was crazy. And I'm like, nope, that bird's gonna die. So I just stepped on it, and that's some serial killer stuff. I hate to admit it now, but it was kind of funny later on telling my mom about those sort of experiences combining and making me kind of cold-blooded for a while. Now I would have just left the bird be. It's like, you sure it's going to die, but, I don't need to help it along, that sort of thing. But just, for a while, yeah, I look back on those times, and I was a little scary. and it's, it's funny to me now how, two almost kind of unrelated things, combining in my mind to make me a, stinking heartless guy. I guess a similar thing, would be when, we started getting a lot of mice in our house. And, at the time we didn't want to do mouse traps because we had small kids around and that sort of thing. So we put out sticky traps. And the nice part about sticky traps, it catches the mouse and you can, get rid of it, let it loose, whatever. The bad thing is if you don't check the sticky traps and you have a mouse that's caught and it just sort of, starves there. And that's pretty grim, pretty awful. But the practice I got into, since we caught so many darn mice one year, was, I'd find a mouse on the trap and I'd take the trap outside and I'd put some newspaper over it and I'd pick up this real big rock and I'd say sorry, I'd apologize to the mouse, and then I'd drop the rock on it and, to give it a swift end. And that was kind of my practice. And then one day at work, I guess they had a sticky trap out by one of the areas we worked in, and it's a mouse got caught in it, and my coworkers who were there were mostly girls, and they were all freaked out by this mouse, and they're like, oh my gosh, what do we do? And I said, I'll take care of it. And so I picked up the mouse, the sticky trap, and I said, oh, can I have a piece of printer paper? And they're like, oh, okay. And they gave it to me, and I put it over the mouse, and then I walked out into the sort of automotive area at work, and one of my coworkers was there, and he sees me. He's like, what are you doing? He's like, oh, the girl's caught a mouse, I'm just taking care of it. He's like, oh, okay. And and he's just sort of watching me, but not quite watching me. And I walk over to a pallet with a bunch of car batteries on it that have been turned in. They're going to be recycled. And I set the sticky trap down. I stand up, I pick up one of the car batteries, and I say, sorry, and I dropped it on the mouse. And my coworker lost his mind. He's like, ah! He didn't know what was going to happen. He's like, it's not what I was expecting at all. And I know how it sounds. It sounds bad, but what are you going to do? You're gonna let the mouse out. You're gonna pour a bunch of vegetable oil on it so it gets off of the sticky trap, and then you turn it loose in some field and it gets back in your store. I don't know. I probably sound crazy, but it hey. But it's to me that's interesting. What's the word? I've had mice as pets. I like mice. If I see them out in the field somewhere, I'm not gonna seek them out and take them out. It's when they've invaded my space, and that's that's just how it is. It's like, sorry, wrong house. That's just, yeah. And with destroying frogs, I had a lot of frogs in my neighborhood when I was a kid, and we'd always find them and sort of catch them, but we never kept them, because if we kept them, they'd die. Just can't really domesticate frogs. I don't know. But I've always liked toads. I like frogs. They're just funny looking and they're fun to draw. I like this little chubby samurai and his sword. I couldn't tell you why I gave the one frog a cigar. Just, he needed to be holding something, and then I just sort of quickly doodled one holding cocoa just because it's winter, and that's what I was thinking about. Oh, excuse me. Sorry, editor. um, but yeah, I'll be interested to see if my editor comes up with any interesting reactions to these stories, because they're different. But that was one of the reasons why I wanted to draw and tell stories, because there's interesting stories from when I'm a kid, and no real other place to tell them. That's all. As far as like animals go, there was a time I remember my shoes got really wet one time, and so my dad had me leave them outside to get dry, and apparently overnight a snake had found its way into my shoe and nuzzled up in there, and that's it was just chilling. And when I brought my shoes in to put them on, I saw a weird looking shoelace and pulled it out, and it was a snake, and I freaked out. And my dad caught it, and then he took it into our backyard and then into the yard beyond our backyard, and turned it loose there. And then maybe a few days later, there it was in our in our backyard again. And so he took it across the street behind the yard, behind our backyard. And maybe a week later, it showed up again. It may have been 3 different snakes, who knows? But to me, the idea that this snake was kept coming back for me was not cool. And after he took it out the last time, it never came back. So who knows? Maybe it got ran over by a car, that sort of thing. But anyways, that's that drawing. That's some weird stories. Let me know in the comments what you think. And like, comment, subscribe, all that jazz. I'll catch you guys on the next one. See ya.